offer is so very important. And why brand still really matters, and I know sometimes we've all heard brand so much that you can think of, it's a little bit of a buzzword, and it's so not. You know, even if the word brand is one you think of, the experience that our collective companies offer our customers, it's more important than ever. The more competition there is, the harder it is to differentiate between people, the more it matters. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and actually give you the 15-minute overview of what I've spent 5 years of my life working on. But I think there's points in there that might be important for us all to think about again. And then the how, just a few things we have on storytelling, some ideas and tips on storytelling, and just the whole concept of hosting graciously, which I know that you've always been so competitive in this.
I'm getting a glare on the screen, so I'm trying to figure out how I can see a screen enter.
And those may seem like little things, but boy, they're important things. And I don't know, have any of you had opportunities to either work for other dealers or manufacturers, or have a tour of the kinds of spaces? And so someone's in your head. I mean, it's these things that you do, these little moments that mean a lot to people, those are some of the things that really differentiate you from everybody else as well. So that's okay? That's okay if I go through that? Yeah? Anything I didn't say there that you wanted me to say? No? The other thing I will tell you, what we will also do, and this is when I will be quiet, and I'll get Kathy to help me, wherever she, Kathy on the camera. We will also take you a little bit more through the document, the manuscript that we've developed for you in terms of how to use those zones and how to use the tools in there. Because there's a lot of stuff, and I think it's good stuff, and we think it's really relevant to a good experience stuff, but we want to make sure that you see everything that's there and feel comfortable with how you can use the pieces. So, excuse me, the co-brand program, just really quickly, we're going to spend more time talking about your showroom, because the showroom really is such a key touch point for customers. But there are templates, experiences, ideas, tools that we've developed for showrooms, your proposals and presentations, the web experience we collectively offer through your site to our customers. Advertising, there's a bunch of stuff in there. It's really advertising and promotional things. With all of these, there are things in there that you can use right now, but we are going to be adding to this all the time. Elements of the mock-up experience, as well as move experience is a term we made up. It's a word we use to talk about everything that happens from the moment a customer says, yes, I'm going to buy from you, until well after their project or their installation is in place. And you know who IDEO is, right? Yeah. So I was lucky enough to, part of this experience work I did, I was on an assignment. It was actually a really good assignment. I had to go to San Francisco every week for 3 months. So it wasn't so nice when I took the red eye home, but going to San Francisco every week to work for IDEO, who sits right on the bay, that was not such a tough assignment. But one of the things that they taught us is great experiences are not just the moment of the experience, it's not just the installation or the moment that all the furniture goes in. That when people say they've had a wonderful experience, any part of life, not just furniture, there's always been something that happened before, then there's the experience, and then there's something that happens afterwards. And when we learned that from IDEO, we started to think about our business, and do we really do enough of those special moments for our clients while they're waiting for the furniture? And then do we do enough things post-installation? Now I know you do much more of that than we do. And actually, you know, you have the harder job than we have. We can be at home on a weekend when the installation's happening. You guys are probably there, which is something that we think about. But even some of the things that I know your dealership does automatically, because you're a really good dealer for your clients, what we find we haven't always done is marketed that really well. So sometimes we do these things because you've always done them. But do we always stop and take enough time, either during the showroom experience or during the proposal, to let customers know that you do these things? And as we were doing our work and looking at how we, you know, throughout North America go to market that way, we thought, no, we're not really capturing that. So that's what that move one means. And I do not have time to take you through all of that right now. But as you explore through those and you look at them, if there is anything that you think is missing, or if there's anything that you think we haven't done really well, we need to hear that from you, because we'll change it. And there's the wonderful thing about everything living on the web, is you can make changes pretty quickly. So please feel free to let us know. Am I already starting to talk too fast for you? I'm listening to myself and thinking, whoa, how annoying. So why? Why are we doing any of this? And there's a guy, I'm sorry, I'm blocking you totally.
You're not, actually.
Excellent.
We
Yeah.
tried to have a straight view.
No, you have a straight view.
Okay,
Okay,
worry about it.
good. This fellow, Dov Seidman, he wrote a really interesting book called How. It's actually a really, really good book. If you need Christmas reading, it's a good book. And there is a quote from his book that I love that says, in the 21st century, it's not what you do that matters most, it's how you do what you do that matters. And I found this quote in his book. There's no such word as outbehave. So anybody else who's an English major, I know that there's no such word. But in his book, it's a brilliant word because he says how you do what you do is your opportunity. It's our opportunity to outbehave our competition. And I thought that was just so clever. And I thought, okay, if you don't like to read books but you like basketball, some guy named John Wooden, I don't know who that is, I like to read books. He said, it isn't what you do, but how you do it. So I thought that was interesting to see whether it's athletics or it's Dov Seidman, who does talk about experience, the experience economy. They're both getting at the same point. And particularly in a highly competitive marketplace, whether it's cell phones or furniture or TVs or whatever it is, it's so hard to tell the products apart. But how the people that you deal with behave, that can make all the difference in terms of your decision making. So I know you've heard this term before, experience economy, and it's the one that we all live in right now. Anybody who goes to a Starbucks, I don't have to tell you what the experience economy is all about. But what all of these guys believe, any of these writers, they all say it is the competitive battleground. And it's where business is going to be won or lost. And really what that means is we can't just rely on the product, particularly with furniture. I mean, with Mediascape, it's pretty unique right now. That's hard to find other competition. Give it a year, you know, give it till next Neocon, we're gonna start seeing Mediascape knockoffs. But when you know that it's really hard to differentiate on the basis of the product, and that's not an excuse, product still has to be good. It's gotta be the right product doing the right thing at the right price. But it's all those other things, all the other accoutrements that you put around the product that are really gonna make the difference. So why? There's too much choice. We all know this from other things that we might buy. And even though sometimes you think choice is great, sometimes in our proposals, we'll say, you can have this, or this, or this, or this, and we think we're being helpful to the customer. And actually, too much choice for people is a little bit debilitating. It can confuse them. And I think, and when you were speaking earlier, you said something about confusion. I think you used the word, or else I wanted you to use it, and that's why I heard it. But, I noticed that with a lot of our showrooms, Steelcase showrooms as well as dealer showrooms, we put so much stuff in there in such a not thoughtfully laid out way that I would watch customers go through and I'd see them be a little bit confused because they couldn't quite see what they were looking at. And then you go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and then the montage looked a little bit like the answer, which looked a little bit like the universal, or then we get into a situation where you'd say, well, that is answer, but we took the montage bin and then we added some universal components. And customers would not have a clue what we were talking about, right? So the, you know, how we talk about it needs to be less confusing. But so much of the reason for having your showroom laid out the way it is visually, it's not confusing anymore. Too much noise. Noise is every brand who's trying to get you to pay attention to them right now. The 11,000 up there means I read one time that any single one of us on any given day can have as many as 11,000 brand intrusions, they call it. So if you woke up to a clock radio that had some ads and you were listening to it, and then you drove in the car and listened to the radio, you watched TV, you saw billboards, you read a magazine, some of us can have up to as many as 11,000. So what happens if 11,000 companies are at you? Like, you stop listening, right? So when you stop listening, it means all of us know that we need to do something that's really special, that really stands out to get them to listen to what we want to say. And smart consumers. Now, I know the word consumer isn't one that we usually talk about for our clients. We talk about customers, or we talk about our audiences or our clients. But, you know, anybody who buys something, a consumer, they're really, really smart now. And probably all of you shop online sometimes before you go buy something. In fact, I was watching a Kmart commercial on the news this morning where you can shop for what you want, you can order it, and then when you get to the store, you already paid and you just pick it up. Like, how smart is that at Christmas time, right? That's really clever. But even our customers, they're starting to shop. They're starting to, unless they know you and they have worked with you before. But if it's a new project, they're, you know, they don't know who Steelcase or Hayworth or Herman Miller or Ohio Desk versus any of your competitors. They don't know who you are. They're probably going to go online. They're probably going to check you out there first. So by the time we see them at a showroom visit or they call you in, they've already done some snooping. So we have to know that we've got really smart customers, and think about what that means by the time they get here and they want to have a showroom experience with you. Have you bought a digital camera lately? That's a picture I took when I was standing outside of a store in New York one day. And I was like, wow, I know nothing about digital cameras. It's totally overwhelming. Or one of these things. Another one of those things just made its way into my house the other day. There's a lot of men in my house. I don't know how much bigger these things, and Barry came in, my husband came in with this big one with these 3D glasses, right? Who wants that? Like, I don't want to sit and put these glasses on my tired old eyes at night and watch the TV. We have so many of these massive screens in our house now. But, you know, I look at them and I can't tell the difference. I don't know what I'm looking at. And maybe that's a girl thing, I hate to say that. But I don't know what I'm looking at there. But anyway, think about our business now. Think about somebody who's looking at this. Sometimes we can't even tell the difference between those. How would a customer ever tell the difference? And I wanted to give you guys just a little bit of an update that we did after NeoCon this year. Look at our competitive landscape right now. Those three were introduced at NeoCon. You know, I took the names of who these competitors are off of this slide just to see if any of us knew. But they're, and you guys probably know better than I do, but all of those were visible at NeoCon. That was all new introductions. All of those were new introductions. Those were all new. Like, how would you know what you were looking at if you were the customer? How would you know which one was better? You know? Now, some are made better than others, and some have more features than others, and we only need to know how to talk about the features that are in ours. But isn't that hard? And if you were that customer, wouldn't you just want somebody to hold your hand, somebody that you trust, and guide you through the process of deciding what's the right product for you? And I said process there rather than process. I'm proud of myself. I'm becoming a better American every single day. So, you know, those marketplace realities. Here's another one. Because lots of dealers, especially some of the dealers in Montreal and Calgary, who like to beat me up about price, which is about the only thing we don't as a team do, right? We're not responsible for pricing, so you can't yell at us for that. But, you know, a marketplace reality is that there can only be one lowest price, right? And if you're not the lowest price, then you better be doing things that add value. Because customers, they base their decisions on more than just the product attributes. And it's way the process of buying them that makes them feel that makes the difference. Now, any of us who buy things in our lives that are outside furniture, we all know that. Sometimes we forget that in our world. We forget that, and I think sometimes we think in the business to business world, it's not important. It is every bit as important for them. I think I have another quote by Seth here. Seth Godin is another really good writer. He's got great books. This one's from a book called All Marketers Are Liars, and he's got one called Purple Cow. And his books are all around, it's like differentiate or die. It's that kind of thing, you know. So, and he has some interesting points in them. So he said, none of us should ever forget that the people we work with, they're buying, they have reasons why they would choose to do business with all of us. And what's important to them is they're going to make these decisions that think, okay, if I do this and I'm a hero, I could get promoted. Or they're going to say, if I, as he says here, if I feel safe and secure with these people, that's going to help me. Sometimes a sense of belonging, those are things that communities that you join can give you, or communities like Facebook or some of those other places when you feel a sense of belonging with others. And we should never forget that, particularly in our business where I've been with Steelcase for a very long time. And when I first started, we used to talk a lot about how Big Blue would reduce your risk, right? And it was important then, and I think over the years we got bored with that message when we stopped talking about it, but reducing risk for people who are spending someone else's money. So if you're a designer, you're spending your client's money. If you're an architect, you're spending your client's money. If you're the facility manager, you're spending your client's money. If you were spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars of somebody else's money, wouldn't you want somebody who made you feel that it was a low risk decision? And I think, again, not only should we make sure we talk about it, we should make sure that we're talking about it not just when you have showroom experiences and the proposals and the presentations and everything that you do at your local market level is about mitigating that risk for the customer. So I know risk doesn't sound like such a glamorous word to use, but it's really important. And it's a really important word in terms of security. So why does brand still matter? This is another fellow whose work I like, Marty Neumeier. He has a really nice down-to-earth way of describing brand. That brand is really a person's gut feeling about the product, the service, the company, or the people who work there. And I like his use of the word gut feeling, because sometimes how you feel about a brand, you almost don't even know how to describe it. You just know that you like it and trust it. So all those big plastic or big TVs that I was telling you about that made their way into my house, they're all Sony. They're all Sony because my 55-year-old husband trusts that brand. And they have all these gadgets and things on them that he will never use, you know? We'll never use them until the next bigger screen comes into the house. But he trusts them. So that's always his fallback when he's looking at all of them. Anybody have 20-year-old kids? Like me? Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think Sony's their brand of choice? Or one that when I was 20, we would have said that is, you know, like 10 years ago, we'd have said, Brad, you're not allowed to talk. We would have said cheap Japanese manufacturer. And now it's totally different. Samsung. My kids are all about Samsung. They were berating Barry, why'd you bring home a Sony when you could have had Samsung, you know? Anyway, it's interesting to see generational differences with the brand. And I thought, this is another phrase he uses that I really like, that the brand is the promise that we're making to our customer. So when you put out a brochure about you put out a proposal, a template, you have a showroom experience where you're walking through and you're talking about the ways that work is changing today, and then you're suggesting that they do business with us, we are suggesting there's a promise that we're going to deliver, and we have to do everything possible to deliver on that promise. And I like to say, if you don't like the word brand, you think it's a little bit too trendy or it's business speak, then replace it with reputation, because it's our reputation that we're talking about. These guys all get it, don't they? I don't have to tell you anything about any of them, because now their logo has become so attached or associated to you for the kinds of experiences you have at those places. Even people who've had bad experiences there usually tell you how somebody turned a bad experience into a good experience at one of those places. And what they know is, you can see it here, they know that everything matters. And this is one of my favorite stories to tell. But the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, he always gets asked, of all the things you do, what's the one thing that matters most? And what I read is that he knows, which I don't know Howard, I'm not pals, but what I read that he knows is they think he's going to say it's the beans. It's where you got them or how you roasted them. And he never answers that. He says everything. Every single thing we do matters. Everything. Which is part of the reason why we've been so interested, consumed, obsessed with having proposals, templates that you can use, and presentations, so that we talk about ourselves in a way that sounds good, that is what the customer wants to hear, but also looks consistent. Visual consistency really matters when you're trying to be as good as one of those brands. So every experience matters, and there's just, I have stolen these words from somebody, but I thought they were great words. I don't even remember anymore who I stole them from. So great experiences are memorable, and memorable experiences, obviously, they need to be positive. Positive experiences are the ones that are really personal and really engaging. Those experiences are the kind that build those emotional bonds. And here's why that's important. Emotional bonds really bind. And while competitors can copy each other's product features, an emotional bond is really, really hard for your competition to surmount. And I know that you have enough repeat clients here that you get that, and you're doing something that makes them emotionally bonded to you. But as we go into getting more business from those people or finding new clients, we need to know that we have to work really hard at creating those emotional bonds. So everything you're going to do on that great floor down there, every moment that happens down there, and then everything you hand them afterwards or send them afterwards, we have to think about creating that emotional bond. So to create an emotional bond, you have to know what matters to your customers, and I thought you might like to see what we learned from hundreds and hundreds of surveys a couple of years back. All of this is still as relevant now as it was a few years ago. So we interviewed designers, architects, big firms, small firms, profit, non-profit organizations, large and small. I think it was about 400 that we had by the time we were through North America. And the IDEO technique is you talk to all those people, you capture what they say, you put everything up on the wall, you look for patterns, right? And we very definitely saw 3 patterns, regardless of who we were talking to. And the first one was, whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever you show me, it's got to be relevant. It has to be relevant to me, to my organization, going back to risk mitigation. I've got to see that it's relevant to helping me meet my goals. And if you can, make it feel personal, and if you can, make it interactive. So interactive is exactly not what I'm doing right now, which is by talking at you, which is awful. But in the showroom experience, we have to work really hard to make it interactive. And this is something I'll accuse Steelcase people of doing much more than you do. We love to go into a room and just talk at them. And as I watch a whole bunch of presentations to customers, I think, oh, we should invite them. You know, maybe set up what you're going to talk about, set up who we are, but we shouldn't just be talking at them. And that's what they meant by this interactive. Also, in your showroom experience, any place where you can let them touch, feel, sit, play, that's really important as well, because it's like going to, if you're taking your kids to a museum or an art gallery and they're bored out of their minds, you take them to a children's museum where they get to touch things. You know, it's not just kids who are like that. Grown-ups are like that too. And that's one of the other things we need to think about with the experience. The other thing is they all said, make it easy. How many times have you heard people say, I had no idea office furniture could be so complicated, right? And they don't even know what goes on behind the scenes between you and us trying to make things easier for you from a Steelcase perspective. So everything about helping them understand the solutions was important. They all said to us, you know what, I'm representing an organization. I've come to your showroom. I need to go back and tell other people about you. If you haven't made it easy for me to repeat those stories or given me something that helps me repeat those stories, I don't know how to convince other people that you are the suppliers that we should work with. So tell me stories I can repeat. And then the biggest one, which you will be responsive. When I call you or I phone you with something, just get back to me right away. Reduce the risk for me, they said. They said, teach me things, particularly designers, who said, you know what, Steelcase, we think you know some stuff that might help us get more business. Teach us that. But teach us in a way that works for us. Don't be so highfalutin or so esoteric with the concepts that you don't understand what you're talking about. Talk to us in a way that we can talk to our own clients with. We have been working really hard on that for the past few years, and if we ever slip into that kind of, well, too professorial speak, you gotta check us on that and tell us to stop, because we're trying not to. And then the other ones make it visual. And this really, you know, this seems obvious, doesn't it? And yet the number of times I would look at some of our proposals to people and there would be no pictures, not a rendering. I would see quotes sometimes where we gave them Hedberg quotes. Here's a memorable experience for you. Here's a quote with a Hedberg. Like, what is that? What does that mean, you know? And I think we have moved away from doing that now, but we really do have to think with anything we give them, I mean, visual downstairs or visual in terms of things we give them. Have we thought enough about having some pictures that just might help them understand what we're talking about? Where Steelcase, where we'll take that to heart, is a lot of them said, okay, you tell us all the time you do a lot of research. We hear about the research. Insights. And then when we go through your showrooms, we can't actually see them. Where are they? And we thought, okay, that's a miss in the showroom. So some of the things you'll see that we have, some of the tools that we want to help you with for your showroom experience are some of those visual props and cues that a customer, you should be allowed to be quiet for a minute and let some of the things down there do the talking for you. So that's one of the things that we're thinking about in terms of the showroom experience you offer here, as well as everything we do in Grand Rapids in the Work Lab or in our workplace spaces. So it was after we did that research, we went, oh, look at that, without even meaning to, kind of did relevant, easy, and visual, and we thought, okay, there you go, Rev. Just think Rev. Before you're going to do a presentation, before you're going to meet somebody, just say, how can I rev this up? And I hope that helps you remember it. So the touch points that I showed you, part of the Clearing program, here's the stuff that you now have that speaks to those. And as I said earlier, we know we're not there's more to do. We know there's more training that we need to probably help you with. But you have got the start of some tools that can help you create a great experience. So those are actually the guys from IDEO. You probably met them, Jim or David, maybe met Tim or David. But they have a quote that I love. They say, you know, goods are made, so Steelcase produces, manufactures the goods, but experiences are staged. I'll tell you why I pulled that quote out. There's another book I like, these guys, Pliny Gilmore, have actually been talking about the experience economy for 15 years, which just shows you they were really way ahead of their time. They use the theater analogy. So I think maybe I said the word manuscript when I was talking about what once upon a time might have called a training document. And so that will just show you how much I've ingrained in myself this idea of theater. And if you think about cold, you want my sweater? It's a good Canadian girl sweater if you want. Thinking about how you stage an experience is really, really important. Like, I'll bet you didn't go to a theatrical production that you loved and they just thrown it together last minute. Like, they worked really hard on thinking about the experience you were going to have. And that's where this idea of theater and stage is so helpful. Even right down to having a manuscript that helps you with some of the concepts and the words and the ideas. Now, the last thing I mean to suggest is that you memorize this and sound like a robot. It's not what we need. That's not authentic. But the most moving theatrical productions you've ever seen had actors who looked as though it was just flowing from them, that you've forgotten that once upon a time they had a script that we had to learn. So part of the reason why we like this idea of a manuscript is read it and absorb it, learn it, but then use your words and bring your emotion into it. The whole idea of theater is what got us thinking about 3 zones. And if we've been using the language around zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and not for a minute do we mean that you should say to a customer, let's go into zone 1. Well, now we finished the zone 2 experience, let's move into zone 3. We don't mean that at all. But the idea of all these brilliant plays, or even great books that have, they're written in 3 acts. There's the beginning stuff you do, there's the middle stuff you do, there's the ending stuff that you do. That's what gave us a lot of the ideas around how to create 3 zones and the kind of props that are inside. And I also like to reinforce this because rehearsal, like even if you've been, I think the best one I've seen lately, has anybody seen Wicked? I saw Wicked again for the 3rd time. It's just such an awesome play. Even somebody who's been doing that for 3 years on Broadway, they still rehearse. They rehearse every day. And I noticed when we were doing observation that all of us, Steelcase people, dealer salespeople, you do so many showroom tours, you stop thinking about it. So then when a customer says, can I come and visit you in the space, okay, so you're there 2 minutes before they show up and you go into rote behavior, right, routine behavior. And sometimes we can't do that anymore. You have to stop and really think about that customer, that experience. And sometimes it's healthy just to shake up the way you've been doing things. And rehearsal, I know people will often say, whoa, that was so easy for you to stand up and talk to everybody. That just comes out of your head. I practice every single time. And I probably shouldn't admit this to you because I'd like you to think I'm so good, but maybe you don't think I'm good right now. I should be careful what I'm saying. But I sit on the plane and I go through everything I'm going to do before I get there. And I think about, and I have done elements of this like for 5 years, but it's never been for you, and it's never been what you have right now. So I always sit on the plane and think about where I'm going, who I'm going to talk to, and what do I need to change. So just a little bit of explanation for why we use this theatrical analogy. So now here's something, I know you can't see that. I want to make a little bit of a point. I found something. Did you know that there was a journal of service and experiential design? I've never heard of it before. So somebody I work with found this journal and they sent it to me. At first I thought, oh yeah, like I'm going to read that. I could barely get through Harvard Business Review. But I did actually take a look at it. And look what I found. I mean, I'm not suggesting you learn this. I think this is kind of funny, actually. But this one article, written by some really, really intelligent, serious business people, they took the experience that I've been talking about right now to a formula. CVP equals EV plus AV plus PV. Like, I don't actually even know how to translate that for you right now. But when I saw it, I thought, okay, somebody thinks this is important enough that they've taken it to this kind of algorithmic business model. So as I read it, I found something really interesting. I found validation for everything that you're doing on your first floor right now, and I found validation for everything that we think makes a great experience. And if anybody wants this article, I would love to send it to you. Jim wants it.
Yeah, I do. Probably has a radar chart.
Stupid part of the table. So
Experience we arranged.
yeah, a good one for me to have to do, yeah. They suggest there's 6 propositions that companies like Disney or others, the ones that do this really well, they found there's this commonality in these 6 things that they strive for. So then they went back and they tested people against these 6 things. And look what I found. You see, sometimes you should read these things that people send you. I'm not even going to go through all of these with you right now, because they do reinforce everything I've been saying. And again, I know you can't see this, but I go, who did they check these 6 propositions against? I find Herman Miller. Oh, now I'm really interested. And I don't know if Herman Miller's the biggest competitor for you here versus some of the others. But several things that are interesting. This one's not good for us. They didn't say, let's go see if Steelcase does that. So that bothers me. So we have to change that. So next time these people think good experience, they would want to include Steelcase in their list. But of all of us in the industry, they went to Miller. Now, when they looked at Herman Miller relative to all 6 of those, they found only 3 that Miller exemplified really well. So that means those 3 that Miller doesn't do, I think there's an opportunity for us there. And the things that they said Miller didn't do are totally the things that you could do here. So one of them is, great experiences are when the business doesn't see front of curtain, back of curtain. They let their customers see the whole thing. They let their customers meet everybody. And everybody throughout the whole experience feels that they're part of that customer's experience and says hi. And at any time could stop what they're doing and explain where they fit in the organization, or explain where they fit in the organization relative to what that customer needs. And I thought, oh, that's not interesting. They're not seeing that when they visit Miller. So there's an opportunity for us. Just the fact what you've created right now, where they can come in and see the cafe. And I mean, that looks so, I want to sit down there and hang out there. They're going to want to do that too. So customers are sitting there and they're mingling with all of you. That's really good. And I bet you they won't see that elsewhere. One of the other things that they talked about is intentionally allowing audiences or customers to co-mingle. That apparently is part of a really good experience. Now, I thought about that, and I thought about what we do in Grand Rapids. When we take customers to separate rooms, we have a really stupid term in Grand Rapids if we used Oasis. I hate that one, but we take them, one customer to this Oasis and one to that, and almost orchestrate their visits so they don't collide, thinking that's what a customer wants. What I read here is no, customers love to see other customers. So I tried to find analogies that would allow that to make sense to me. A hotel or a restaurant. Have you ever gone to a restaurant and there's nobody there? I bet you started to back out, or right, or you got really worried about it. Or if you think of hotels that are great, has anybody stayed in a W anywhere, or any boutique hotel, whether it's a W or not? They're intentionally designed so you walk in, you go, whoa, look at this happening place. I must be really happening too if I'm staying in this place. And then you notice that people, they want to be in it, and they're having business meetings, and or casual things. But there's something that they all want to be together in that spot. So what you've created now, you've got such an opportunity for that. But let's talk more about some of those other things so that we can figure out how to intentionally do the things we don't see anybody else doing. Sorry, one more. You totally fed up with me yet? Do you need to stand up or anything? Oh, okay.
You're doing fine.
I'm doing fine? Okay. So a great production, you need the right script. We've written you a script. Kathy's going to take you through the script. The right actors. You got to learn your lines now, guys. You're the actors. You're going to go on stage. And then backstage crew, everybody who works here. You are all part of this experience. And I know you do that anyway. I think, you know, when your clients come here, they get to meet all of you. But now the fact that your space looks so open and so transparent, I think that no customer is going to come in and say, oh, the transparency of this space is reminding me of the transparency of your organization. They're not going to say that, they're going to feel it. And those feelings go back to that idea of creating those memorable experiences. So now, let's say right now, we have to say, do you have everything in place? But I would just really like to suggest to you guys that every single morning when you come in here, you all say, is everything in place? Or before any customer comes in, and this is to you guys too, that we're all saying, do we have everything in place before we have this next experience that we're about to have? Experience is your brand. The brand is the experience they have with you. Brand is our behavior. I checked there to make sure it's spelled it your way, not my way. We still have U's in some of those words like behavior and neighbor. I have to check. So I wanted to ask you guys, who is responsible for the great hosting experience that happens here? Everyone. Oh, good girl, yeah. You know what? Because it's true. And I think sometimes, and even we've done that, you know, we say to somebody, you're the showroom manager, the experience manager, the person at the front door, concierge. But it's not just the concierge job to create a great experience. It's absolutely every single one of us. So I mentioned Seth Godin before. Like, that's a fake nose. That's not really his nose. But something that he, at least I hope it's not. I haven't actually met Seth either. But he talks about storytelling and how important storytelling is, and that people have such a limited capacity to absorb facts. We have an enormous capacity to absorb narratives. And I'd say last time you heard a really good piece of gossip or a really good joke, did you need a handout to remember that afterwards, to go home and talk about it, or talk about it at lunch? You didn't. So there's something in the storytelling there that's very different from being handed a lot of facts. We've had to think about this at Steelcase because we were going down this path of too many facts and too many things that were hard to remember. And we check ourselves daily that we're not doing that. He also says if you want to sell a product or a service that's at a premium, which I think we do, then you really have to focus on the story you tell. Now, you got to invent stuff. We have to design products, make products that we're talking about. This is not to say that a bad product can be excused. But once we have, then we have to invent the really good stories about it. So Mediascape, or any of the things that we're working on like that, Room Wizard, we have to know that we have a really compelling story and that we tell the story in a compelling way. And compelling means that the customer is seeing the relevance for them in the thing that we've designed. I was at a session a little while ago, which actually I picked up the magazine. You guys know Deepak Chopra? Was on the cover of that magazine. I was at this event, it was in our showroom in New York, and he was there along with this other fellow, and we were helping him kick off this world tour that they're doing on wellness, right? And he had a great quote, so I stole it, I typed it in my BlackBerry when he said it, because everything they're doing is about animation with and showing the human body in ways that if somebody said to you, your arteries are clogged right now, the doctor wouldn't just say it. There's these really, really good visuals that help you see it. And he has this belief that if you can really see what's going on inside your body, you'll think more about what you put in it, or you'll think more about what you're doing to it. So anyway, his whole point was that he was saying, these stories, visual stories or verbal stories, is what brings data to life. So again, as we're talking about Mediascape, Seascape, any of the products you'd sell, how you help a customer reduce their real estate. There could be a lot of numbers there. Sometimes the numbers have to be there. But how you tell the story is what is really going to help that person remember it. Oh, this is just something I want to tell you. You've seen that quote, right? So my personal experience, here's me. If necessity is the mother of invention, fear is the grandmother. So I just want to tell you, just this idea of storytelling, I learned it the really, really hard way because I was terrified. And going back 5 years to when I took on this experience work that I was telling you about, I had opened my big mouth and said I need to do something more for the company or I might leave. And at the time, Frank Merlotti was the president. And I made it sound like I was grandstanding when I said that I didn't mean it to sound that way. I said to him, I'm not sure there's anything else I can do in Steelcase Canada. I've worked there for 25 years. And if I don't leave now, I'm almost 50. At the time, I was almost 50. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I'm going to be some old geezer trying to find a new job. So I think, that's why I talked to him. I probably didn't even tell any of that, but I just wanted to qualify that there. So at the time, he said, okay, this experience stuff, go work on that. So I'm okay, great. And then right after I left him, I thought, I don't have a clue how to do that. I don't have a clue how to begin. So I found some books that helped me on customer experience management. Then the next part is when you start to figure out what's wrong with your company or how you have to close that gap between what you want to be and how people view you. That's where I was learning some hard things about Steelcase. And my problem was I had to go back and tell Frank and other people, more senior people, what customers were saying about us that they didn't want to hear. So that's where the fear set in, right? So I learned a little storytelling trick that I wanted to share with you guys that I found stealing other people's, well, from some of those books. I don't know if I want to go back. Stealing quotes from some of those other people or ideas from some of those other people made it easier for me to tell the story than actually saying, well, you know what? They think we're arrogant. Jim Hackett, who's our CEO, didn't want to hear that. So I found lots of things in these books, stories about other companies, where I could they could draw their own mental analogy to us. And I found that it worked. So I started thinking about that as a storytelling technique, and thinking about how we could tell our customers' stories. And I think if you do think about that, find other customer stories you can talk about, or other quotes you could use. It's a unspoken proof point or validation without you, like it doesn't look like you just made this up because it's to your benefit. And I think they start to observe those facts a little bit more. So here's just a couple of tips, you know, in terms of thinking about the stories that you're going to tell in your showroom. So think is one thing, you know, think about it. It takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it. Tricks, so know some of these tricks that really good storytellers know. It's a science as well as an art. I'm going to show you a couple of those. And then the other one, tell your stories, practice your style, and talk to each other. So that goes a little bit back to that theatrical analogy, that you need to do that. And you know, I don't know if I have a slide in here for you, but I read something that said, if you borrow somebody else's story, it's like when I told you I had those words about memorable experiences, I don't even remember where I stole them anymore. Now I just feel like they're mine. You borrow a story from somebody else, tell it 20 times, and this theory is that after the 20th time it will feel like your story. So even if, I'm trying to give an example for you. We did some work with Accenture. Have you seen the Accenture video? If not, you should take a look at it. I think you would find it interesting. It'll give you some really good talking points. So I didn't work on Accenture. You didn't work on Accenture. But I don't think, right? But you guys have seen the video, and you could, downstairs in that space, tell that Accenture story without having worked on it, right? So I think that when you're thinking about great stories to tell, don't feel that just because they haven't happened to you, that you couldn't repeat somebody else's story. So one of the little, this is a great one, Andy, when you said this, keep in mind that you're more interested in what you have to say than anyone else is. So if you're thinking about that and you know you want to tell a story that's going to help you move further along the sale cycle, you just have to think about how that part of the story is going to matter to the customer so that they want to hear the rest. I think you should map your message. I always map my message. And if that means you do it on your iPad the way Brad does, or for me, I'm still little scraps of paper with circles on them. I always map what it is I want to say. Because if you don't know where you're going, oh, I'm going to get that Yogi Berra one mixed up. But you have to know where you're going, or you're not really going to know how to get there, right? So when you map, I think there's some key questions. You know what? I will happily leave you with all of this because I know I'm racing through it. But if you're always saying, you know, what's my main message? What pain point does that customer have that I want to talk to them about? What matters to them? How can I convince them what's worth buying or trying? What are my competitors saying? How do I want to articulate where we're different? What resistance or objections might they have? And then what action do I want them to take? If you've mapped all of that out, that is then how you could take that and put it into an appropriate story that's a relevant story and an interesting story for them. Find a story that connects the dots, ones that they want to hear. These are some books I know you guys will know. And they're a little bit old, but I just wanted to remind you about the importance here of telling those stories well. So John Kotter is a professor at Harvard Business School, and he wrote this book called Leading Change, really, really clever. All the guys that read or write for Harvard Business Review thought this was a brilliant book. At the same time, somebody named Spencer Johnson wrote Who Moved My Cheese? I know you know that book, because that book has been out so much that we almost got really sick of it, right? Both books were about the same thing. I just want to show you what happened. So in 2003, Kotter sold 210,000 of those, and Johnson sold 14 million, because he took the same message and the same story and put it in a way that was really easy to understand and fun for people to read and listen to, right? Because stories will always trump a mountain of facts. This is where you have to think about them. Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They have a hero and a protagonist. Hero can be your client. You know, if you're dealing with a facility manager, who's another facility manager that you might view as a bit of a hero, and see something in that person's story that they can carry back into their own. Again, I would say if you watch this Accenture video, Dan Johnson is a fellow there. He'll say some things that you'll think, ooh, that was good. I might use that next time I'm talking to a client. You have to think about how you kick off your introduction. I mentioned this much earlier. You've got about 60 seconds to hold somebody's attention, or have them think, you know what, maybe they have something to say. Maybe I want to listen more. Your introduction, and again, this is not just if you're speaking. If you're writing something, think about your proposals this way. You know, not only do we forget to put pictures in there, we don't very often write proposals in a way that it's pleasant to read them. So ask a question or make a bold statement. You know, begin with a quote. I like to begin with a quote. If you're good at it, begin with a joke, just if you're good at it. And then think about what happens in the middle. You know, is what you're saying there, is it going to ignite action? Is it thought-provoking? Is it going to prompt them to consider something new? And then in terms of the ending, you got to close the loop. Take them back to where you started in the beginning. And you know, doing this is where the thinking comes in. They have to think about your story. If you can, and I stole this from somebody, if you can leave them with a smile, do that. You know, because we all like happy endings. And then if you can, and you should, let them talk. Anybody remember the show Murphy Brown? I loved that show. I think it was probably, I must have been, I don't know, it was either baby number 1 or 2. There were great Murphy Brown reruns on just in the middle of like a 2 a.m. feeding, right? She had a terrific quote that, when are you going to realize if it doesn't apply to me, it doesn't matter. And I thought that was great. And again, that goes back to the whole idea of relevance, right? So relevance, how do you find great stories? We've got a lot of good stories. Find our stories, you could repeat them, tell them 20 times and it'll feel like your story. But the other thing you can do is scour the newspapers and magazines, or scour the website for other stories that might feel relevant to what you're doing. Borrow somebody else's words, you've seen me do that a lot. Does anybody have a book of quotations at home? Or you don't even have to book, go online. There are wonderful sites where you can go online and find somebody else's quotes. And if you just capture what other people have said, and they've said it better than you could, like good quotes, you'll get the credit anyway, and yet you didn't have to think up the words. I think this is a great one, and I use this every day. Yeah, I use not only all the brains I have, but all that I can borrow. You're just as smart if you borrow good ideas and good thoughts from somebody else, including if you do something on a weekend or on vacation, and you think, oh, that was a great experience. If you can, stop for a minute and think about how you might take however you felt and what happened there and translate it into the kind of experience you want to have in here. Become a keen observer, look for connections. I've got my pile of magazines here that before I get on the plane, I pick up absolutely every magazine that I can. And I read them on the plane, partly because there's nobody talking to you on the plane, right? And there's nobody, you know, buzzing your BlackBerry. Every single time I sit on the plane and read those magazines, I see something, even, I don't know, Chanel ads or other things, that I'll be sitting there and I think, oh, that connects back to this thing or connects back to that thing. And what it does is it gives me talking points with whichever customer I'm going to be with that day. It's one of the things I program myself to make sure whatever town I'm in, that I'm always watching the local TV station in the morning, so that when you're with that customer, you're with that group of people, you can talk about things that are really relevant to them. So here's one other thing, I think this is really important, and I don't think that you guys are so guilty of it, but we sometimes do it at Steelcase. When we're speaking about all of these things, avoid the jargon, you know, avoid the too much wordiness, avoid evasive language. You know, language, that was a good excuse for this, or a good example for this. Years ago, we had something where we mapped interaction versus autonomy. I don't know if anybody, you probably didn't even pay any attention to it because you knew back then it was stupid. But you would look at that and think, like, what customer knows what I'm talking about? They thought they were going to buy office furniture, and I'm going to talk to them about interaction versus autonomy. It was a really good concept behind that. The words we used, well, yeah, it was boring, and it sounded insincere, and it sounded like we were trying too hard. So, you know, fluffy words and verbosity, try hard not to let them kick in. I don't think most of us do that when we're talking in a showroom experience, but we sure do it when we put proposals together, don't we? And one of the exercises I put myself through was to read proposals that we had all done, as well as proposals from Miller and Hayward and Technion. And I hate to tell you, we all sound the same. We all sound fluffy and verbose and ridiculous. And so, you know, look for those moments to be just you, like good, straightforward language about what you're going to do. Beatrix Potter, anybody read those stories to their kids? You know, she used to always say, the shorter and the plainer, the better. That was her principle for writing. So I like these contrasts. Here's the modern day version of that. A great book I found called Why Business People Speak Like Idiots. It's a book. It's a great little book. And they'd say, stop the business bullshit. Because if you stop the business bullshit, you'll stand out from everybody else. People find straight talkers likable when you're telling your stories. If you tell a story that makes you seem human, just like them, they're going to relate to you better. If you can make them laugh, that's great. And if you don't think you're particularly funny, and I stole this quote from somebody, don't worry, other people are really funny. And if you're a keen observer, you're going to see some things that you can talk about. Or you could use a simple prop to tell a memorable story. So this idea of propping is a really big deal. And if you're thinking about your customers coming in or the props we want to show you for downstairs, sometimes props can really help you. Sometimes I'm showing you a quick video clip. We were at NBS on Monday. She has, Heather, who's their VP of Client Resources, I believe was her title. When they bring customers in, she found this awesome video clip from a movie that demonstrated what they were trying to say about the panic that this customer was in about all the things they had to do. And it was great. And so in 2 minutes, she showed a video clip that she probably would have taken maybe half an hour to bore them to death with her PowerPoint. So one last tip, practice what you're going to do out loud. Anybody ever read Good Night Moon to their kids? Yeah. So that you start to hate it. Right? Shh, send it around. But what's really good about reading that book out loud is that book is written in a way that helps you use different rhythmic patterns. And when you're talking to people, those rhythmic patterns are important. So when you practice out loud, even if it's to the mirror, to your dog, or to your kids, I did have it in here, it'll take at least 20 tellings before you repeat it. Practicing in front of your kids, everybody who said they have 20-year-olds, have you ever told them what you're going to talk about and they say, that is so lame, you don't say that, right? I have found right now, I think I have a moment in time where I've got 4 of them between 13 and 23. They are just the best barometer for me. What is hot music? What are stupid things to say? The other day at breakfast I said I went online, they all started to laugh. I still don't know why they were laughing. But that is passé, you know? Anyway, bring some 20-year-olds in here sometime to talk to you guys and say what's going on in that world. Even if you don't YouTube or Facebook or tweet or anything like that, at least you can kind of act like you know what it's all about. And you have to pay attention to your audience. So when you're doing your presentations downstairs, that Jerry Maguire test is really good. Do you have them at hello? And if you don't think you have them at hello, rethink how you begin your presentations next time. And I think I'm at risk of doing this right now. But if presentations are too long or boring, you know, tell your story, but don't go for it. Above all, be authentic, right? So authentic means know what you want to talk about, talk from the heart, have a script or a manuscript, but learn it so that it really comes from you. And one of the biggest ways to be authentic is for you to know your stuff. So that's another quote I like. Have you ever seen that one before? When you can do common things in an uncommon way, you'll command the attention of the world. And I thought, okay, now you're freezing me up. I need to get you guys up and moving. Common things. Go into a showroom to see furniture. Everybody showing the same kind of stuff and talking in the same sort of way. And when we can take that common experience and do it in a different way, an uncommon way, then that's really our opportunity to stand out. Oh, that was a little bit cute, sorry. So I just see this as the beginning of what we're all going to do together, and it's the beginning of your experience. It should keep on evolving all the time. One thing, you've seen Love How You Work on our, at least I hope you've seen it, on our literature. And when we designed that, we didn't design that just to be for us. I mean, it's, you know, it's we, it's the collective we. And we would like you to feel comfortable saying to your customers also that, you know, together we're about work. We have great products and services and ideas for them to use wherever they work. And that we want to be about them, you, Mr. Customer, and whether you're a designer or a facility manager or somebody using this stuff, we want to create a great space for you to work in. And how is where we are really different from our competitors, because all the research that we do on how users work and behave, and then embed that into the products, is what makes us different from everybody else. And then the love part is just everybody spends way too much time working to not love it. So I just did that for you backwards, and it was really easy because I knew what I wanted to say. And I think also that it's a relevant message, so it's not just mine, it's not just still cases, it's yours too. So, your great showroom experience, the 3 acts and 3 zones. So your zone, now, let me, as I'm saying the 3 zones, have you all been talking about that, or am I throwing it no? Okay, okay. So, as we go through this quickly, and I'll show you right now, this will help with that. The other thing is we are here till the end of the day. So I know beyond when we have to finish up in this room, we're around, but if you want to spend some more time talking, we would love to do that. So we are here if you want us to be.
Gail, Do we want to hand out the book, so as you're talking about this portion, they actually have them in front of them? They're right behind you in the box on the counter. Just because then, as they go downstairs, they'll have seen you talk through it.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking while we do that.
Stand up.
Why? I am on a roll. There is no time to stop and go to the bathroom.
She's gonna have to start from the beginning again now if we break.
Yeah.
We won't wind her back up.
5 minutes, no more.